So today we're getting into the meat and bones of the hard questions that have been sent to me. This first one, perhaps I'm making my life easier for this one. It's, should politics and religion mix? Yes. There you go. That's the answer. That's what we should do. Politics and religion should mix. But perhaps you need a richer question than that. Sorry, perhaps you need a richer answer than that. And so the answer I want to give is kind of like how, rather than whether. And I think if we look in the background of Christianity, it's almost a ridiculous question, because the reality of my Christian faith, of the Christian faith as a whole, and its whole heritage, is it is politics. Let me give you a starter for 10. Imagine if you are you're the Jewish nation stuck in slavery in Egypt. Well, God comes and says, "Let my people go." He does it to the ruler of the day. It's politics. They exit, they get chased by an army, the army gets killed. Well, that sounds like politics to me, a pretty hardcore version of it, but it is politics. They wander around in the wilderness for a while, learning how to be a people under God, with God as their king. Sounds like politics to me. They then go and start taking over Canaan and start disturbing the nations there. That's politics. Later on, they're told, well, the way you ought to run is as a bunch of tribes, independent and accountable to God. But they say, well, God, we want a king. Sounds like politics to me. Moving on, then you get the promises of the Messiah, the anointed one, the son of David, David the king. So what they're talking about in the idea of the Christ, the Messiah, is a coming king. Politics. Jesus then comes. What does Jesus do? Well, Jesus starts preaching about the kingdom of God. Politics. When he comes riding in on a donkey, what he's doing is replicating what kings did in their entry, a triumphal entry. Politics. And then when Christ dies and is resurrected and ascends to heaven, he seats himself at the right hand of God the Father. Politics. He's on a throne right now, ruling. So it's easy to see the Christian faith, the Christian walk, as a political act, because we claim Christ as king. But let's go back 400 or 500 years and ask, well, why the question? Why do we ask the question about whether politics and religion should mix? Now, what I talked about in a couple of talks ago was this thing we called the Reformation, where the political establishment of religion and politics was being disconnected. Somebody somewhere somehow said, I'm not sure this is how it should be. Because actually, for 1500 years before that, since the time of Constantine, religion had been the empire's religion, certainly in the West. And then, of course, you move on and you get to the time of the Enlightenment. As I mentioned, the Enlightenment questioned the validity of religion as an authority to define reality. And I think it's from there that this question really gathers pace. Should politics and religion mix? And what you see coming out of that period is science, yeah? And one of the interesting sciences is etymology, the science of classification. And you see it in these trees of life, if you like. So a bug is not the same as a cat, is not the same as a tree. Yeah. I would suggest that actually it's this classification thing that we do, along with the erosion of the role of religion in defining reality, that people started to say, well, politics is not the same thing as religion, and nor should it be. They should be separated. And you see that given constitutional life in the American Declaration of Independence and in the constitutions of places like France, who had very active rebellions against the ruling establishment and created a new way of living, thinking and being out of Enlightenment philosophy. But I would suggest that if we give too much credence to this separation between religion and secular what is religious, what is secular, then we're not asking or answering the right question. We're playing ourselves into the hands of people who seek to define religion and politics as a separate thing. They never were, and it's not meaningful to separate them. And the reason I say that is because whilst it would be meaningful to say that there's a difference between the religious and the profane, I'm not even persuaded it's a meaningful thing to define out religion from secular. It's a false distinction. And the reason I say it's false is if you are living in the UK right now, you cannot but be informed by your religion in the act of your political suffrage. Every time you vote or don't vote, you are involving your religion, because your religion is not separated from you somehow, is it? You are a person, a whole person, a person of life, and you're involved in the world. And it really is, that is the simple point to make. You can't separate religion because you can't separate people from politics. And if I might describe it in a grassroots way, if you're living in an area of the country which has high levels of homelessness, and there's a patch of land which is available for housing, and there's a housing strategy and a homelessness strategy in your local authority, you're going to have an opinion on how that land is used. Now, you might have different opinions on economic development and what is good for all in terms of overall well-being, economic well-being and housing, but you've still got to make a decision, have an opinion on whether the housing should be more accessible to homeless people or less accessible. You can't actually divorce the two. And I would suggest, in the words of St. James, that actually to not have an opinion, to not be engaged, is actually irreligious. He says quite bluntly, doesn't he, in James chapter 2, he says, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. It's that simple. We can't divorce ourselves from the political life because we're alive. And we shouldn't. If God is king, then he wants us involved. You and I will have to make decisions about our party political allegiance, but you cannot separate that God is in your life and that you're in the world. There you go. Quite a simple answer, I think. I'm sure you knew that already. Thank you for listening.